All right, now I want to explore a lot of these consequences. That's kind of my favorite thing, is to blame the entire 20th century on Woodrow Wilson. And
Yeah.
it's very important, I think, what you say about it, the World Wars being one great big civil war of the West, basically, and how American intervention in World War I caused all that. I'd like to explore that a little bit more, but first I kind of like to focus on what you brought up there about the people who just wanted to expand the government for government's sake. And I'll point people to a very interesting article by Murray Rothbard on your website, World War I as Fulfillment for the Liberal Intellectuals, is very interesting. And I'd also like to ask you, have you ever heard that G. Edward Griffin interview of Norman Dodd about the foundation of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Lew?
I have never heard that. Of course, Norman Dodd was a famous guy, famous congressional investigator against foundations.
And I have... Right, he worked for the Reese Committee, which was, I think, the first incarnation of the Un-American Activities Committee, and they weren't going after, Hollywood actors and stuff. They were going after the Carnegie Endowment and the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and things like this. And I just have a very short clip here, but this is Dodd talking about the foundation of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. About the question that they were founded on, I believe, is the frame here.
Is there any means known more effective than war, assuming you wish to alter the life of an entire people?
So is there any means more effective than war, assuming you wish to alter the life of an entire people? This was the founding question of the Carnegie Endowment in 1908, he said. And then in 1909, they studied it for a year. And then in 1909, they came back and they said, no, there is no means more effective than war, assuming you wish to alter the life of an entire people. So then their next question to go and study for a year and spend millions of dollars and hire all these professors is, how do we get America into a war? And this was how the foundation, the Carnegie Endowment, was founded. And of course, if you go back and trace through, it's the Morgan Board of Directors, the men who created the central bank, the men who created the Woodrow Wilson administration, Colonel Edward Mandell House, and all of those guys.
And of course, wars don't start with their official opening date. I mean, World War I was planned by a lot of people long before 1914, people who stood to make a lot of money out of it and who wanted power. And I also think we always have to keep in mind about something about people who rise to the top in government. F.A. Hayek famously talked about why the worst rise to the top in government, unlike in the private sector where the best tend to rise to the top. Not always, of course, but there's a tendency, especially in a free market, for the people who can best serve the consumer to rise to the top. But in government, the worst rise to the top. But something about people in government, yes, they want power. Yes, they want money, but they like killing people. This is the ultimate thrill for these guys. They like mass death. They like they love moving around armies, and not only are they not bothered by the deaths, I believe they like the death. I mean, they're like lizard people or something. I mean, they're not, there's something about them that's not entirely human. They're so power mad. They're so desiccated. They're so different from the rest of us. There's something so evil about power, so diabolical about the power that they exercise, that it makes them, in a sense, somewhat inhuman, and they get a kick out of this. But
right, and then their whole theory is that the rest of us aren't really human. They can do whatever they want with us.
We're just gooks.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just ends to their means.
Yeah, as Russell Means said on this show, don't you get it? You're all Indians now. See?
Yeah, it's true. Russell, a great guy, and established a 100% reserve bank, I guess, in the Lakota Sioux territory. So very neat.
Oh no! Well, we'll have another Indian war soon enough then. And one more thing about this story was, according to Norman Dodd, again, this congressional investigator went through the original papers of the Carnegie Endowment. They sent a letter off to Woodrow Wilson, I believe in 1917, cautioning him that the war not end too quickly, because the changes that they were trying to make to American society, they didn't want it to be too easy for people to go back to the way things were before.
Well, Murray Rothbard talks a lot, not only in the article you mentioned, but in his other work, about the progressive era. So much evil came out of the progressive era, and this was at a time when intellectuals and corporations and foundations and a whole collection of bad people wanted to do things to the American people, and we got the Federal Reserve System, we got World War I, we got the draft. Murray would have argued that the whole prohibitionist movement, and of course also the beginnings of the drug war, were part of this. The Federal Trade Commission, many regulatory agencies designed to bring about really a fascist state in America, and they did succeed. We have, of course, at least a soft fascist state in America today, and the war was very important to these people, and they did indeed plan it. It did not break out in 1914, or rather, if it did break out in 1914, it was very timely and useful to them. But these people want a war, just like people wanted World War II long before it actually broke out, just like people wanted the Vietnam War. I mean, we can go down, they wanted the Iraq War long before it broke out. So they're very smart people, very evil people who stand to increase their power and their money, reward their friends, punish their enemies, and also, for a lot of them, get the chance to kill people. They like killing people. I always remember, and this is, of course, not on a warfare state, but on a smaller level, that hearing during the Ron Paul debates when no, this is terrible. I can't remember his name. The Christian minister. No, the Christian minister was governor of Arkansas, Huckabee. So Huckabee is talking about the death penalty, and when you saw him talking about why he believed in the death penalty and his execution of various people as governor, you could tell this guy was talking about like the greatest thing that had ever happened to him.
Yeah,
that he could decide and take people's lives. So that's, those people tend to prosper in government.
Well, there was an old interview of George W. Bush when he was still the governor, where Henry Lee Lucas, the vicious serial killer, Bush had to commute his sentence down to life in prison. And then they were going to hold a new trial. I forget exactly, but basically what happened was he was convicted and sentenced to death for a murder that it was proven he did not commit. He was in another state, in another jail at the time. And the guy asked George Bush, well, how can you commute the sentence of Henry Lee Lucas? And Bush says, now listen, I've killed a lot of people, all right? But, in this case, my lawyers told me, like, it was a legally binding thing. We couldn't execute him for this crime that it was proven he didn't commit. And so, whatever. But that was his defensive response was, hey, look, I kill people every day. Remember when he went on Larry King and he mocked Carla Faye Tucker, quoting something she never said, oh, please don't kill me, when? As he's talking about killing a woman. A lady who had totally turned her life around in prison and helped other people, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, they all love they love the death penalty because it, of course, elevates them above the common strain of humanity and gives them the power that they just love exercising. So, yeah, Bush killed a lot of people in Texas, and then, of course, he was responsible for killing, 1 million people when he was president? I mean, I don't know how many innocent people he killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and even soldiers fighting for those countries. They're innocent too. I mean, they're defending their country against an invasion. So that's George Bush. You want to think of the state? Just think of George Bush, and it's no different under Obama. In fact, in some sense, I mean, the president, of course, is not actually the all-powerful ruler. There's an oligarchy, and when one political button on the lapel of the oligarchy becomes a problem for them, people no longer like the face of Bush. Well, they put a different face on the button. But the continuing regime, the continuing vast apparatus of corporate and state power that's running us and taxing us, spying on us, sending people to be killed and killing other people, that permanent government continues to exist no matter who the president is.